The city of Talladega, Alabama is just like every other southern city, with hot summers, a little bit of rain, and a lot of humidity. Now, if you're hosting an outdoor event in Talladega, you'd probably want it to be moderately hot, with a low chance of rain and as little humidity as possible. By looking at this chart, you can probably tell why Nascar hosts a weekend in Talladega every spring and every fall. Okay, good. Let's do that 32 more times and create the perfect NASCAR schedule based on the weather. In 2019, NASCAR announced massive changes to its schedule, some of the biggest we've ever seen. Although we didn't get to see very much of it thanks to COVID-19, there were both good and bad changes NASCAR made for 2020. Atlanta and Martinsville moving later in the spring will significantly better the weather forecast for both of those race weekends. Inversely, moving Daytona Summer Race to the middle of hurricane season in the name of a wildcard race doesn't seem like the most well thought out idea. WeatherSpark is a website where you can look up any city's trends in weather across a year. Going back to our chart, the red line represents the average high temperature a city receives, the blue line represents the average chance of rain across a year, while the green line straddles the line between humid and muggy. The blue and the green line are both in percentages. Now my red zone and my teal zone might seem arbitrary to you, but I'd say that's good spring training weather. Also, this chart is for Homestead, so you can see why Homestead was able to move to the beginning of the year. Between 2010 and 2020, before the postponement of the season due to COVID, there were 364 races. Of those 364, I counted 47 races affected by rain. That's postponements to the next day, delays before and during the race, and races that were shortened after a rain delay after halfway. This does not include cautions brought out by Tony Raines. Of the 47 races, Bristol Spring Race and Daytona Summer Race are the biggest culprits of rain delays with 4 each. In many cases, NASCAR risks 35% chance of rain for the best weather of the year at a track. Michigan in June averages temperatures in the 70s and has low humidity, so NASCAR is willing to gamble on a relatively high chance of rain. This is the same thinking for Pocono. The Cup Series would traditionally race there twice in 6 weeks because usually the temperature dips below 60 degrees outside of summer. Let's hope we get lucky for the doubleheader weekend because June 28th gets to rain about 38% of the time. Rain is not the only factor in this experiment, although the biggest factor in cars actually racing. If you're hosting a race, you want fans to be comfortable in the stands. I've been to a summer Daytona race where humidity is oppressive and I have to bring a second shirt to change into. It's clear to see that the series shift north for the summer, while races in the southeast have their most miserable months of the year. But places like Indianapolis are sticky in the late summer. This is one of the several factors in dwindling attendance for the Brickyard 400. No one wants to see a bad race while melting in the Hoosier sun. Unfortunately, the Indianapolis 500 takes precedent and sees the best weather in Indianapolis during a year. For this experiment, we will be eliminating second dates for most tracks, as well as the All-Star race. This allows us to diversify our schedule in both track type and cities. The tracks with 2 races will be Daytona, Charlotte, and Talladega. In addition, we'll be having a second race for a rotating championship host, since there's a handful of tracks that could accommodate a race in November. You may be asking yourself, if you're eliminating most second dates, that only leaves us with 20-something races. That is true. There are 23 unique tracks currently on the 36 race cup schedule. Adding our 3 tracks with 2 races and remembering our rotating finale, that brings us to 27 races. Okay, let's add 5 more paved tracks that Xfinity and Truck Series runs at. So the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, Gateway, Iowa, Mid-Ohio, and Road America. We'll also add Nashville Superspeedway with the impending addition to the 2021 Cup schedule. I left Eldora off because I don't think the Cup should run on dirt, and their chart shows they'd be best fit in the heart of the playoffs. That's not something I'm willing to deal with, so that's why Talladega was given 2 dates. If you're keeping track at home, we have 3 spots to fill. If I were to hypothetically add Road Atlanta, the weather overlap with the Atlanta Motor Speedway would be near identical. This would be ideal at the same window as AMS. With that thinking, I wanted to space out my last 3 entries. Sticking with Tennessee, we can add Memphis. Memphis Raceway is a flat, elongated short track that hosted Xfinity and trucks for a decade until 2009. Who doesn't love road courses? There's a big one in the Lone Star State that might be the best facility in the country. Welcome to Nascar Circuit of the Americas. Keeping the F1 theme, Montreal would be neat. However, I went with Mexico City. Xfinity raced there 15 years ago, and since that time we've had a Mexican driver emerge into the top tiers of NASCAR. So that's our 36 races. We have all the puzzle pieces, but don't have a box to look at. Now we can put it together. Before I continue, I have 3 notes. This is not my personal ideal schedule. I'm not particularly interested in your schedule not based on weather. I feel like this could spiral into people sharing what their schedule looks like and where North Wilkesboro would belong on it. I like history and tradition. This exercise did not care about that. One example is how awful Darlington is on Labor Day weekend. You know those stories of drivers losing 12 pounds after sweating during the Southern 500? Well, that's because it's miserable in South Carolina in late summer. Rain is unpredictable. This schedule will give us the best chance to get the race in as regularly scheduled. Even if a track has 5% chance of rain on the average in November, it is improbable, not impossible, that a race can be impacted. Just like the 2015 Quicken Loans Race for Heroes 500, which was Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s last win, at Phoenix, during a rain-shortened event. With rain tire technology, the percent chance of rain at road courses is less important than it is on ovals. I was willing to punt on some weekends with the decent chance of rain if I knew the race could still be run. Here's Mid-Ohio. The Daytona 500 is the biggest race in NASCAR history, no doubt. It is historically the first race of the season. Well, at least since 1982. See, before then, Riverside Raceway hosted a NASCAR a month before the 500. So what I'm about to say isn't unprecedented. That's right, the Daytona 500 isn't my first race of the season, although we won't have to move their motorhome. Let's start NASCAR's season at the road course at Daytona. But wait, don't pause the video or click away, just hear me out. I took this picture before the Daytona 500 this year. Now look how nice it looks. Well, this was Sunday, which got washed out. It was miserable walking a mile back to the car. I went the next day and it looked like a postcard. Although it rained this year and a few times in the past decade, February and March is by far the best time for Daytona, not July and August. If we're doing 2 entries for Daytona, the road course being the appetizer makes the most sense. The 500 is still the main event there, and the road course race would only build the hype for the big race. You guys want to go out west? I think we should. NASCAR got it right when they shuffled their 2020 schedule around. Vegas, Auto Club, and Phoenix are all great right after Daytona, and we can keep them the same as the current schedule. NASCAR also nailed moving Atlanta back a few weeks. In doing this, Atlanta's average temperature bumps up a little bit, making it less miserable for everyone in the stands. You guys have seen Homestead's chart before, spring training weather. You can see why baseball trains in Florida, and why IndyCar starts their season in March too. However, I am flipping the race weekends for Homestead and Atlanta and diverging from NASCAR's schedule. Homestead's humidity continues to rise, and a week sooner would make it slightly more favorable. This also has shown how much drivers have gone through in the early post-coronavirus break. Look at the temperatures and humidity levels for June. As you can see, it must have been awful inside a car, especially at Atlanta. Everything has been pretty straightforward. Now let's throw a grenade into this. We're going to take a page out of Formula One's playbook and do Circuit of the Americas and Mexico City back-to-back. In the spring, both tracks are suitable to host and are far enough away from the F1 Grand Prix to host as well. Researching this, I learned Mexico City's nice all year round. Other than the rainy summer months in the F1 weekend, this is a very flexible race to schedule. Right after this weekend, it's Easter. NASCAR does not usually run on Easter, so the series can leisurely work their way back to Charlotte and enjoy some time off. They've earned it. Everyone good? Let's keep going. Richmond's sole race slots in April, which is pretty normal for them. The NASCAR circus returns to Texas, this time at TMS. Texas has a spring race normally, and its weather is significantly better than IndyCar's slot in the schedule when they run on a Saturday night in June. Talladega's first race weekend would be next. We stepped over into May, and Talladega is normally around this time anyway. Just like that, we have 2/3 of the way done for super speedways. But fear not, Crimson Tide fans, we'll have another one of these during football season. After Talladega, Darlington returns to the pre-throwback era Saturday before Mother's Day. This weather period is so much better for Darlington than Labor Day, friendly humidity levels being the biggest factor. It's not quite summer in South Carolina in May, but it gets there soon. Next is Nashville. A race at the short track would be great, but for now we'll run on the concrete. The humidity is still pretty low, and they essentially have the same chart despite the superspeedway being outside of town. The 600 comes after Nashville in the same spot it's always been. Although I said I'd break tradition, Charlotte in May is definitely in our ballpark for what we constitute as a spring training weather. I'm surprised Gateway doesn't have a Cup Series race yet, but I would like to change that. The track is outside a major market and they've had great attendance success for their IndyCar race. Then, the track that used to own Gateway, Dover. May I show you the best chart ever? Sonoma could host a race year-round. The lines are nearly flat. Good on you, Sonoma. Oh, before we move on, computer, show me green Sonoma. This is from the spike in the rain during the spring. It's kind of jarring to see, since every memory of the track looks like Mad Max. Have you noticed that most of these races have been in the south? As the days get longer, the temperature rises. The south has a ribbon of tracks that feature the rise and fall on our charts. That's why we can double up on a few. During the summer, northern states get better weather obviously. Their peaks fit right into the zones I established, which is perfect for this time of year. The Midwest and Northeast also host the majority of our road courses too, so starting from Sonoma, we're entering the road course mini-season. I left Chicagoland and Pocono with the same dates as they would have under normal circumstances. 2 tracks after that make their Cup Series debut, with Mid-Ohio and Canadian Tire. Like I said earlier, ignore the rain for these 2. Michigan hosts their 1 race next. Road America starts a 3-race sprint to the playoffs with their debut in Cup. With 2 races left in the regular season, we're going to end it with a bang. That's right, Iowa and New Hampshire. Iowa isn't much of a short track, but this would be our equivalent to a Bristol night race. New Hampshire would be subject to the PJ1 treatment, but fortunately they've had pretty good races over the last couple years. Hoping for a gem of a race as the series transitions to the playoffs. Round 1 would feature Watkins Glen, Indianapolis, and Bristol. I would love to push Watkins Glen back and see the leaves changing around the fastest road course NASCAR races on. But with the series able to take the short trip to Loudon and Bristol still a factor, it was an easy choice. Indianapolis would hopefully draw more fans with the cooler weather, although it would depend on if the Colts play at home that day. Finally, the series goes to Thunder Valley. Bristol having a cutoff race for 2020 is going to be insane. Someone is going to be wrecked by another playoff driver and have a Hall of Fame sound clip on NBC. Let's hope we can have the fans back by then. Round 2 of the playoffs, we go Kentucky, Talladega, and then back to Charlotte for the Roval. Kentucky is Kentucky, and by this chart, you can see how cruel it is to voluntarily have a summer race. Talladega fills its second date and provides a wildcard race for the second round. I've been to several Talladega races and actually wore a flannel shirt to a fall race once. With the Roval, I originally wanted to stash it before the 600 similar to the Daytona 500. The more I thought about it, it made more and more sense to push it back into October. I'm a big proponent of the playoffs being a microcosm of the season, and with our expanded road course slate, only having Watkins Glen would be criminal. Round 3 starts with a Memphis-Kansas breeze, with the round culminating in fireworks in Martinsville. Memphis needs a lot of renovation, but I think it has the potential to be Richmond with harder braking. Gifting such an important playoff race to a new host wouldn't be my first choice, but the chart says otherwise. Kansas exists in a playoff weekend already. Finally, Martinsville rounds out the round. The days are shorter, and it's bound to end under the lights. I'll give credit to NASCAR, having rounds end at Bristol-Martinsville is a great idea. So that's it, everyone's given their dates to my best ability, but there's one more, the championship weekend. The championship weekend has affected my schedule the entire time. Ultimately, the championship needs to be at a location that is warm enough to host in November. The best tracks for this mirrors the early part of the schedule. That was not a mistake. Weather has decided where we go. My list of championship hosts are Atlanta, Auto Club, Homestead, Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Texas. Think of this like the Super Bowl. All the pomp and circumstance of the Super Bowl, except it's in Fort Worth? To be fair, we've never had a winner-take-all race at 4 of these tracks, so maybe it'll pay off with a good race. But the ultimate question is, did I make the schedule more weather-friendly? Slightly. The original 2020 schedule is what we're going to compare with. The tracks hosting races post-COVID-19 break were chosen for their proximity to Charlotte and their state's willingness to reopen to professional sports. The races certainly were chosen for their low humidity and temperature. Here's a breakdown of the schedule I made, in the like comparison to the real schedule. Some weeks we had to give up overall better weekends and force them into a slot that fit for us. The Midwest stretch was such a doozy, balancing weather with track type, but we were still able to nuke the above 50% mugginess at Kentucky and Indianapolis. The traditional scheduling allows us to grind down the rough stretch of Dover, Daytona, and Darlington, where it's almost guaranteed to rain. If it doesn't rain, the fans will cook in their seats in the late summer sun. As the season winds down, the temperature drops on my end. Texas and Las Vegas help inflate the overall averages for temperatures. Did I say average? On the left is our 3 results for the entire year, and broken down by month. On the right is the average for the original 2020 schedule. Overall, you can see that my reshuffling has done a better job overall to lower the chance of rain, temperature, and humidity. Rain being a percentage point and a half lower is substantial. Temperature and humidity would be a massive factors in improving crowd size. We want fans to support the series that NASCAR Heat is based on, not have a NASCAR heat stroke. Even though occasionally my scores are higher, the body of work shows the schedule could be built smarter without restraints. Charted out, here's the comparison between the two. Like I said, my rain percentage is lower, but that doesn't guarantee anything. NASCAR could run 36 races at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and get a bad draw. In fact, the Xfinity race there this year was postponed due to rain, with the race being completed after the Cup Series race. Is my schedule good? I wouldn't go that far. The summer stretch to the playoffs is pretty brutal, although a mass exodus of 1.5 miles out of the playoffs can only be seen as a net positive. But here's the thing. What I did wasn't fair. Adding tracks not on the Cup schedule isn't a fair comparison, at least to the 2020 set of races. You know what we could do? Make it fair. In the post-COVID races, we've seen several positive reactions to NASCAR testing out one-day shows, midweek races, and doubleheaders. What if we took the races and treated them more like Australian supercars or Formula 2? We could have 2 races towards a championship over the course of a weekend. Here's a list of our 23 Cup tracks, broken up into hosting 1 race and 2 races. If the parameters of building a Cup schedule were to start in Daytona and make sure we have 36 races, well, call me game. Let's start in February and bring back Daytona Road Course and Daytona 500 opener. We'll also throw in Homestead to get as low humidity and rain score as we possibly can earn. A doubleheader weekend at Phoenix jumps over Auto Club and Las Vegas as SoCal and Nevada start to heat up. On the way back, we can visit Eddie in Texas with the doubleheader. NASCAR returns to its roots in the southeast as we hit our 3rd straight 1.5 miles. We take Easter off, and then it's up to the Commonwealth the following Sunday. We introduce our first midweek race as we double dip at Richmond before Talladega. Talladega is the first of 4 tracks I won't be doing a doubleheader race weekend at. The others are Martinsville and Bristol, because 1,000 laps in 2 days is too much. The other is where I place the Roval, which is hardly a road trip for the NASCAR community. In May, Darlington kicks off the party, then back-to-back short track weekends at Martinsville and Bristol when the weather is slightly better for both compared to the usual April dates. Bristol slots in the weekend before the 600 because I don't like the All-Star race, but hey, it's the All-Star race in 2020, so it might be a little bit too on the nose. Charlotte hosts the 600 before we take a week off. I don't know if you know this yet, but summer's really hot. We're entering June with 20 races done, but it's just science that most places have their best weather of the year during the spring. But there's a hearty few tracks that will let us play. Dover and Sonoma pair off with New Hampshire and Pocono afterwards. Then we can breathe. Formula 1 has a break during their year. We could throw an All-Star race there if needed, But for now, let's give NASCAR a month-long break where drivers can travel the world, drink some beers, or run at the local short track. Some R&R will be needed because we're only 2 races from the playoffs. Watkins Glen hosts round 25 with a hot and slippy Chicagoland afterwards with a playoff spot on the line. Originally, I wasn't sure I could manage to keep the playoffs, but with doubleheader weekends we can actually get the results quicker. Michigan gets 2 races with a slightly better Indianapolis afterwards. 4 are eliminated. Kentucky hosts the opener of the next round, with Talladega and Bristol night race following after. It would be appointment viewing in a sea of SEC football. 4 are eliminated. Then the semifinal round being 2 at Kansas and then the Roval. We would now be left with our championship 4. Can you think of what's left? Come on, really think about it. We finished the season under the lights in Martinsville. Just think of the show we'd get if the championship 4 was, I don't know, Logano, Truex, Hamlin, and Elliott. If you thought the cutoff race for Martinsville was going to be a powder keg, just wait till you see the championship race, Martinsville. So that's what I have. Let's see them scores. How about that? We were able to squeeze 2.7% chance of rain out of the original schedule. One that's cooler and less humid to boot. Charted out, you can see the differences month to month. But this is all data on a screen. The difference between 27% chance of rain and 24% chance of rain is nothing if the forecast is bad. There are some surefire bad race weekends that can be avoided to make everyone's lives easier. But over the course of the year, everything will even out if you have to compromise weekends at the track. If the governing body trotted out this fan-friendlier schedule with any emphasis on the weather, the second it rained before the Daytona 500, people will complain on Twitter. Building a schedule is hard work, and until the science of the vortex theory is refined, we'll just have to hope the jet dryers are on standby.
Hey, this is Michael from PushTV of the video you may have just watched. Thank you very much if you made it this far. Subscribe, like, all that stuff. I'm sure you can imagine these take a little bit of time, but video 2 is in planning, so, follow us on here, follow the accounts on Twitter that I linked below, and you can stay in touch until then. Some big plans coming in the next couple months. Be sure to watch the John Boy's videos on SB Nation's channel because I'm sure if you know, it's heavily inspired by that. Until then, stay in touch. Let me know if you liked it and, what things I can help improve going forward. So thanks again and have a good one.